Bonjour mon ami. Hi my friends, Mark here with Wolters World, and we're in Avignon, France, driving around Provence, a beautiful part of France. You really need a credit card to get around and see all the great things. And it got us thinking, what are the things you need to know about renting a car in Europe when you're traveling abroad? And that's what this video is about. Tips and advice for driving and renting a car in Europe. Now, there's three main things I want to start talking about when we look at driving in Europe. One thing you need to know is the roads are much smaller here than you have in the US. You don't have your 4-lane mega highways, you don't have your passing lanes, you have very small roads, and therefore you're going to have smaller cars, okay? So be prepared for that. Now, with the smaller cars, which would be the second thing, so one, smaller roads, two, smaller cars or different cars, what you need to realize is most cars here you're going to rent are going to be manual transmission, so you got to drive stick shift. If you do not want stick, you need to make sure you request an automatic car. And yes, it will cost more here in Europe to have an automatic than a stick shift, okay? So make sure you know that. Also, with your cars, how they're different is since they are smaller, the luggage space in the back and the trunk is much smaller as well. So you're not going to get 4 big suitcases in the back of a medium-sized car. You'll get you'll get 2 suitcases or maybe 2 carry-ons if you go for an economy size. So be prepared for that. And the third quick thing I want to say is there's always traffic in Europe. You know, in the US, you might be driving through Kansas or Illinois and there'll be nobody there for half an hour of you driving. Here in Europe, you always have traffic. There's always people around, and it can get a little frustrating because you're always focusing. But the thing is, with all the traffic, you should know is there's not going to be any cruise control when you're driving around. So don't look for it because it's not there. Now, let's get into some more specific advice. If you're looking to rent a car, there's a few things you can do. You can buy from international agencies like Avis or Hertz or Europacar. We use Europacar a lot, and they do a fine job. Or you can do local companies, which usually have better deals and prices, but they don't have all the extra coverages and things like that. So make sure you're looking online for good companies to rent a car from. And when you rent that car, you want to make sure you're renting a small car because, again, those roads are small, so it's hard to get around. So pack and plan accordingly. Now, some more advice I have for when you're going to be driving and renting a car, get the GPS when you're going. And when you get the GPS, make sure you have them set it on English when you go because it'll be standard in French or Italian or whatever country you're in. So make sure you have them set it on English because you may think you can find it. You won't, okay? Have them set it on English and make sure before you leave the parking lot or your bed and breakfast or whatever, put the destination you want to go in beforehand. Because the thing is, when you're driving, it's not always as easy and you need to have the exact address. So if you have the exact address, it's easier to put that in when you're taking off, you know, before you take off. So it is giving you the right directions. Because lots of places, we were driving in Ireland and apparently the kids in Ireland find it fun to switch the traffic signs. So it can be a little confusing. GPS can be a really big helper. And I know a lot of us have Google Maps and that is kind of helpful, but the GPS I think works best. Another thing you need to look at when you're renting a car is insurance. Now, just like in the US, they always offer you the extra insurance to buy. I do recommend getting some insurance because you don't know what your insurance from home will cover, and it might be out of your pocket and you get paid later, or your insurance coverage at home won't cover at all. Now, if you're going to Canada, well, that'll be okay from the US. But if you're coming from Europe, it might not. So you need to look into that. Sometimes credit card companies will give you that option. Sometimes they won't. So make sure you know your insurance options out there because you can be screwed for some scratches on the window or whatever. So make sure you're getting the insurance when you are traveling. Another thing you need to look at is an international driver's license. Now, a lot of people say, Mark, what is this? Well, basically, it's just a translation of your license. You can go to AAA in the US and get one. It's a few dollars. It's not too expensive to get one, and it can give you a good peace of mind, but sometimes you don't need it. Coming to France, you don't need it. Germany, you don't need it. We were in Greece. The person in front of me was from the US. They did not need it, but for some reason, we did need it, and we didn't have one with us that time. So they would not rent us the car. So you need to make sure you know, do you need an international driver's license, yes or no? And there are different ones out there. For example, if you're going to Latin America or South America, there can be a different one than the one you might use in Europe. So ask and see which one's going to be right for you. That's why we're AAA members, so we get the right things. Now, another thing you need to know about when you're driving around Europe is getting gas. Now, diesel is much more popular in Europe than it is in the US, so make sure you see what your car has. If it's diesel or normal gas or benzene or petrol, depending what the verbiage they use in the country you're going to. Now, when you go to get gas, One of the things is your credit card might not work at the pump because Europe, they have little chips in their cards, and in the US, not all our cards are going to have chips until 2015. So you'll start to see them in your credit cards at home, but they're not there yet. So your credit card might not work at the pump, which can be a problem because not all pumps in Europe have an attendant, okay? So make sure you go to one that has an attendant and fill up there so you can pay inside. Inside, they'll take your normal swipe credit cards, okay, and cash always works. But just know your credit card might not work at the pump. Also with gas, what you need to know is sometimes the gas stations in Europe are a little bit more hidden. Yes, on the highways it's easy to find, but in the cities you're not always sure where to look. So it might be in a street corner or it might be on a back alley or something like that. Ask your hotel or the people you're renting your apartment from or around, where can I get gas? Because it's not as simple as finding the big Shell station or the big Amoco station on the street corner like you have in the US. So you want to pay attention to those things. Another thing that will be a little bit frustrating about driving in Europe is the parking. Because yes, sometimes you park on the sidewalk, sometimes you park in a ditch, sometimes you park nowhere. And it's hard to find parking in Europe, and you're always parallel parking, and sometimes you give a little bijou, a little kiss to the car in front of you and behind you, which can get a little frustrating. But just know that parking is one of those things that's really going to be a little bit of a frustrating thing when you are in Europe because there is not a lot of space, therefore there's not a lot of parking. And everywhere you go, you're probably going to have to pay for parking. So make sure you have some coins to pay the meters. Now the thing is, they might not always have the meters you put the coins in right at your spot. Most of the time what you're going to have is there's going to be a box, okay, on the street, and you have to go there, put your money in, and you get a ticket, and you put that ticket in your front window of the car so you don't get a ticket, okay? You don't want to get booted. You know, when I was in Portugal, I would see people get booted all the time, and good luck doing your translation work with that. No buto on my carro, you know? You people, I've heard it so many times, it's funny. So just know that you're going to have to pay for parking, so look for the box for the parking thing. Usually there's an arrow indicating where you need to go. Now, let's look at the driving when you actually are driving in Europe because, you know, that's what you really want to know about. Look, on mainland Europe, they all drive like in the US, you know, we're driving on the right side, everything's fine there. In the UK, it's on the left side, which can get a little confusing if you're not used to it, especially on the roundabouts. So make sure you check out some videos like what do I do on a roundabout? What are some of the issues I need to deal with when I am driving on the left side? Because it can be a little confusing. Now, it's not that hard. We've driven in Scotland and Ireland and England. No big deal. It was just the roundabouts that were a little bit more complicated to deal with, okay? Another thing you want to look at is remember in Europe they use kilometers per hour. It's not miles per hour, so make sure you're not like, wow, I'm going 100 miles an hour. No, you're going 100K, okay? So make sure you have that ready. So make sure you're focusing on the kilometers, not the miles, all right? Now, another thing you might notice when you're driving around Europe is you don't see a lot of speed limit signs. Usually what happens is cities and outside the cities have two different speed limits, and they'll say inside the city is this limit, outside is another limit. So when you're driving around, when you come into town, make sure you look and see what is their speed limit for a city, okay, when you go in, so you don't have any problems there. You don't really have too many cops with the guns, you know, radaring you, but they do have the cameras that will take pictures of your camera or of your car if you go through the red light or if you're speeding, and yes, they will find you and they will put that on your credit card. Hertz and all these people will let the police know that yes, that was Mark Wolters going through there, and you'll get a nice picture of yourself driving too fast, okay? Now, another thing is when you're driving down the highway, what you have to realize, not everywhere in Europe is the Autobahn. The Autobahn is in Germany, and there's only certain parts of the Autobahn in Germany where you can go as fast as you can. What you need to realize is when you drive in Europe on the highway, you always have to stay on the right, okay? It doesn't matter if you're like, oh, I like to stay on the left. No, you have to stay on the right. You only go into the left lane when you're passing someone, and then you move over back to the right. Because if you are on the Autobahn, and we've been going 200 kilometers an hour, and a BMW is flying up beside us, yes, we still had to get over because they're even going faster than you. So make sure you're paying attention to that, because I've seen a lot of almost accidents because of that exact thing of people not getting over. Now, some last little tips about driving in Europe. One thing, if you get lost, don't worry about the GPS or things. Just get out of the car and ask the people where you are. That's why you want to have a normal map with you so you can say, where am I? How do I get this place? And it doesn't matter if you're in Greece or France or England. People will find a way to explain to you where you need to go. They might write it down and make a map, all these kind of things, because the locals are your best bet for help. So make sure you ask them if you do get lost. Another tip I want to give you is there are a lot of toll roads in Europe, so make sure you have a lot of 1 and 2 euro coins to pay the tolls. And it might be a bridge like in Lisbon, or the highways in France or other places. You might need to have those, and having those coins ready to just throw in the little machines or give it to the people right away makes life so much easier, because not every bridge will take your Visa card when you go over. Luckily some do, like in Lisbon I know it took my debit card, but you know, you don't want to be stuck when, like, oh, I can't cross the bridge because I don't have any money. So make sure you have some coins in your car. And also pack light, because one of the things is when you pack light when you're going to travel is because yes, the trunks are smaller, but also it's a safety thing, because when you're driving around and you want to see all these little villages in Provence and all kinds of things, if you have a lot of stuff in your car, it makes you more susceptible to getting your car robbed, and you don't want that to happen. So pack light so you can have 2 small carry-ons, put that in the back of the car, and you don't have to worry about it. Now those are just a few tips about driving in Europe and renting a car in Europe. I really wish you a great time if you're driving around. The Loire Valley is fantastic to drive around. Provence, Ireland, and Scotland, you have to drive around to see some of the great things out there. So many great things to explore. If you want to learn more about exploring France or Italy or the US, check us out on our website at woltersworld.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, and we really appreciate your likes and subscriptions, and we wish you a safe drive throughout France or wherever you are. And au revoir from Avignon in front of the Pope's Palace. Bye.